Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Megillah, coming close to the end of Chelik Vav. We will be learning in this share with Hashem Daf Kuf Nun Amid Aleph. We pick up on Kuf Mem Tes Amid Beis, Siman Taf Reish Pei Hey, and we pick up with Sif Hey. Now, before we go into Sif Hey, today's daf is a fascinating daf. Today's page in the Mishnah Berurah is a fascinating page. It almost exactly mirrors yesterday's daf in Daf Yomi. It goes through the cheshbonos of the Dalet parashiyos, which Shabbosos over the 5 to 6 week span of Shabbosos, ranging from the end of Shvat through Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when the Dalet parashiyos fall out. So before we go into Sif Hey, I just want to outline the Mechaber, and again, the Mechaber was really mirroring the Gemara in Megillah. The Mechaber from Sif Aleph through Sif Daled really followed kind of a default scenario as far as the calendar with Chodesh Adar. And that default scenario was that Rosh Chodesh Adar fell out on a Shabbos. Now, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on a Shabbos, that Shabbos will be Parshas Shkolim. The next Shabbos, which the Mechaber called Shabbos Shnia, the second Shabbos in our Cheshbon, again, the first Shabbos was Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Adar. That was Parshas Shkolim. The second Shabbos falls out on Ches Adar. Since the second Shabbos is Ches Adar, that means the following Friday will be Purim. So Shabbos Ches Adar is the Shabbos before Purim. Therefore, that Shabbos will be Shabbos Zachar. That'll be Parsha Zachar. The third Shabbos is going to be Tesvav Adar. Tesvav Adar is going to be what's known as the Shabbos Hafsaka. That's going to be a Shabbos that is not one of the Dalet parashiyos. On that Shabbos, we'll lay in the regular parashas HaShavua. Everything will be normal. That will not be one of the Dalet parashiyos. The fourth Shabbos is going to be Chav Beis Adar. That Shabbos will be Parshas Para. And then the fifth Shabbos in our cycle, in this scenario, there are actually 5 Shabbosos in Chodesh Adar, because the first one was Rosh Chodesh. The fifth Shabbos is going to be the last day of Adar. It's going to be Chav Tes Adar. Since the last Shabbos, Chav Tes Adar, is the Shabbos right before Chodesh Nisan, that will be Parshas HaChodesh. That's the default scenario that the Mechaber followed from Sif Aleph through Sif Daled. Now let's go to Sif Hey. It says the Mechaber, Chal Rosh Chodesh Adar Hasamach LeNisan Toich Yemei HaShavua. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar is not Shabbos. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Wednesday. Okay, well actually, can it fall out on Wednesday? It can't fall out on Wednesday. Let's say it can fall out on Wednesday. Let's say Wednesday is Rosh Chodesh Adar. So Chal Rosh Chodesh Adar Hasamach LeNisan Toich Yemei HaShavua. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out in the middle of the week, Va'afilu be'erev Shabbos, even if Rosh Chodesh Adar is Erev Shabbos, Magdimin Likrois Parshas Shkolim b'Shabbos Shalofanov. Now we pull back Parshas Shkolim. Parshas Shkolim will actually not be in Chodesh Adar. Parshas Shkolim now is going to be the last Shabbos of Chodesh Shvat, because Parshas Shkolim has to be before Rosh Chodesh Adar or maybe on Rosh Chodesh Adar, but it cannot be after Rosh Chodesh Adar. Why? So let's remember, what did we learn? The whole reason we have Parshas Shkolim is to commemorate that on Rosh Chodesh Adar, the Bezdin would be Mashmian al Hashkolim. They would remind Klal Yisrael that it's time to give the Machzah Shekel. So as a machlokes in the Gemara, either they would do that on Rosh Chodesh Adar to give them 30 days from Rosh Chodesh Adar to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because by Rosh Chodesh Nisan they have to start taking funds from the new Lishka for the Karbanis Tzibur. So the Machzah Shkolim have to be in by Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So we want to give the people 30 days. So Mashmian al Shkolim on Rosh Chodesh Adar. There's another sheet in the Gemara, Rabbi Gamliel, that it wasn't based on 30 days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It was based on 2 weeks before Tesvav Adar. Why? Because Tesvav Adar is when the Shulchan, the Shulchanium, Shulchanios, the money changers would set up shop in Yerushalayim around the Beis Hamikdash. They would set up shop on Tesvav Ba'adar so people could come and change their money so that they have a machzah shekel to give the machzah shekel. And we want to give people 2 weeks notice. Either way, the mashmian al hashkalim had to take place by Rosh Chodesh Adar. Therefore, Parsha Shkalim also, when we commemorate the mashmian al hashkalim, has to take place no later than Rosh Chodesh Adar. So if Rosh Chodesh Adar is Shabbos, so that Shabbos could be Parsha Shkalim. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is Wednesday in Shvat, we can't wait till Adar to make Parsha Shkalim, because then we're already into Adar. We either don't have 2 weeks before Tezvav, or we don't have 30 days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So now we pull back Parsha Shkalim, and Parsha Shkalim will actually be the last Shabbos in Shvat. That's what the Mechaber says here. Chal Rosh Chodesh Adar asamach leNisan. If Rosh Chodesh Adar of Adar Beis, or a regular Adar in a Shana Pshuta, the Adar that's close to Nisan, is Toichim Shavua, if it falls out in the middle of the week, Va'afilu be'erev Shabbos, even if it falls out on Erev Shabbos. Those of you who are learning Daf Yomi know what the Chiddush over here is. I'm not going to go into it now. Afilu be'erev Shabbos, even if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Erev Shabbos, Magdimin likrois Parsha Shkalim b'Shabbos shalofanav, we pull back Parsha Shkalim to the last Shabbos of Chodesh Adar. Umafsikin b'shnia. If that happens, then the following Shabbos, which is going to be the first Shabbos in Adar, is going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. That Shabbos will not be any of the Dalet Parashiyos. Why? Kedei shetei Parsha Zachar b'Shabbos hasmucha lePurim ulefanea. Because the next one of the Dalet Parashiyos has to be Parsha Zachar. And Parsha Zachar has to be the Shabbos before Purim. Now, if we pulled back Parsha Shkalim to be the last Shabbos in Shvat, because Rosh Chodesh Adar was the middle of the week, then the first Shabbos in Adar is not going to be the Shabbos before Purim. The next Shabbos, the second Shabbos in Adar, that's the Shabbos that's going to end up being the Shabbos before Purim. And therefore, the first Shabbos in Adar, the very next Shabbos, the Shnia, the second Shabbos in our cycle. The first Shabbos in our cycle is Parsha Shkalim, it's the last Shabbos of Shvat. The next Shabbos in our cycle, that's why it's called here the Shnia. It's not the second Shabbos of Adar, it's the first Shabbos of Adar. The first Shabbos of Adar is going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka, Kedei shetei Parsha Zachar b'Shabbos hasmucha lePurim ulefaneha, so that Parsha Zachar will be on the Shabbos before Purim. Ve'emechal Purim be'erev Shabbos. If your Dalet Adar, if Purim falls out on Erev Shabbos, Magdimin likrois Parsha Zachar b'Shabbos shalofanav. Again, Parsha Zachar is the Shabbos before Purim, even if Purim is on Erev Shabbos. In the Gemara in Megillah, there's actually a Shita, the Shita of Shmuel, who holds that if Purim falls out on Erev Shabbos, then Parsha Zachar is the next day. It's on Shabbos. Why? It's a little bit funny that Purim, that Shabbos, Parsha Shkalim is actually after Purim. So Shmuel says it's okay because the 15th is Shushan Purim. So the people who are Mukafin Arei Chaimim Mimais Yeshua ben Nun, they're going to make the Sudas Purim on Shabbos. So it's okay to have Parsha Shkalim on that Shabbos. The Zechira and the Asiya will be on the same day. The Zechiras B'chias HaMolek, the Zechiras Maaseh HaMolek of Parsha Shkalim will take place on Shabbos on the same day that the Mukafin, the Ayaras Mukafin Chaimim Mimais Yeshua ben Nun will be doing the mitzvahs of Purim. At least they'll be doing Sudas Purim and maybe Mishlach Manas, not Kriyas Megillah. Okay. So that was Sifei. There's no Mishnah Berurah on Sifei. Now we go to Sivav. Sivav says to Mechaber. Now he's going to go through the cheshboinus, based on the rule that we just saw in Sifei. Now the Mechaber is going to go through the cheshbon of which days it's possible for Rosh Chodesh Adar to fall out on, and based on which day Rosh Chodesh Adar is, when the Dalet Parashiyos will be. Says the Mechaber, Hayomim sheroy likbaya behem Rosh Chodesh Adar. Which days of the week is it possible for Rosh Chodesh Adar to fall out on, according to the rules of our calendar? Says the Mechaber, Zavdu. You could have Rosh Chodesh Adar on Zayin, on Shabbos. You could have it on Beis, on Monday. You could have it on Dalid, on Wednesday. You could have it on Vav. You could have it on Friday. but you cannot have Rosh Chodesh Adar on a Sunday, you cannot have it on a Tuesday, and you cannot have it on a Thursday. So Rosh Chodesh Adar could only fall out on 4 days of the week: Shabbos, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now, v'simin l'shabbosai sahafsaka, and how do you know which Shabbos is going to be the Shabbos hafsaka? Which Shabbos is going to be the Shabbos that is going to have not one of the Dalet parashiyos in Adar? Which Shabbos of Adar is going to be a plain, ordinary Shabbos, so to speak? Zatu, Bu, Dad, Ubiv. What does that mean? Kaloimar. Kishachal Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, so that's Zatu, right? The Mechaber told us you have the Simonim for the Shabbosai Sahafsakos are Zatu. That's the first one. What's Zatu? Zayin, if Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, then the Shabbos Hafsaka is going to be Tesvav. Now, the Cheshbon is really a pretty easy Cheshbon to follow. It goes like this. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is a Shabbos, so then that's the default scenario that we've been discussing until now. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is a Shabbos, so then Purim is going to be the following Erev Shabbos. So Rosh Chodesh Adar Shabbos, that's Parsha Shkolim. The next Shabbos, the second Shabbos of Adar, is going to be Ches Adar. That's going to be the Shabbos before Purim. Purim is going to be that following Erev Shabbos. So the second Shabbos of Adar, Ches Adar, is going to be Parsha Zachar. The next Shabbos is going to be Tesvav. That is going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. That's Zatu. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is Zayin, is Shabbos, then Tesvav Adar is going to be a Shabbos of Hafsaka. Why is it going to be a Shabbos of Hafsaka? Because the next Shabbos is going to be Chav Beis Adar. That's going to be Parshas Parah. And the next Shabbos, the last Shabbos, is going to be Chav Tes Adar. That's going to be the Shabbos for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's going to be Parshas HaChodesh. That's the first case. The second case, says the Mechaber, Ukishachal, top line, Kufnun Amud Aleph, Ukishachal b'yom beis. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Monday. So then, Mafsikin b'vav. Then Vav Adar is going to be a Shabbos, and that's going to be the Shabbos Hafsaka. The Siman, Bu, the Siman is Bu. Beis, if Rosh Chodesh Adar is on Beis, then Vav is going to be the Shabbos Hafsaka. And again, this is very easy to follow. In this scenario, Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on a Monday. Okay, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on a Monday, so then what did we learn? Parsha Shkolim can't be on the following Shabbos because the following Shabbos is already going to be Vav Adar. We can't make Parsha Shkolim on Vav Adar. Parsha Shkolim has to be before Rosh Chodesh Adar. So if Rosh Chodesh Adar was on a Monday, so then the previous Shabbos, which is the last Shabbos in Chodesh Shvat, that's going to be Parsha Shkolim. Okay, in that case, the next Shabbos is going to be Vav. If the next Shabbos is Vav, that's not the Shabbos before Purim. So since it's not the Shabbos before Purim, it can't be Parsha Zachar. So then Vav Adar is going to be a Shabbos of Hafsaka. The next Shabbos is going to be Yud Gimel. That's going to be Parshas Zachar. And the next day, Sunday, is going to be Purim. The following Shabbos is going to be Chaf Adar. That'll be Parshas Parah. The last Shabbos of Adar is going to fall out on Chav Zayin Adar. It's the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so that is going to be Parshas HaChodesh. Okay, continues the Mechaber. Ukeshachal b'yom Daled. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on a Wednesday. So then, Mafsikin b'Daled boy. Then Daled Adar is going to be a Shabbos, and that's going to be the Shabbos Hafsaka. The Siman, Dad. The Siman is Dad. If Rosh Chodesh is Daled, so then Daled is going to be the Shabbos Hafsaka. The scenario over there is that Rosh Chodesh Adar is a Wednesday. So again, we can't make the next Shabbos. The next Shabbos is Daled Adar. That cannot be Parsha Shkolim. Parsha Shkolim has to be before Rosh Chodesh. So the last Shabbos in Shvat is going to be Parsha Shkolim. The next Shabbos, which is the first Shabbos in Adar, is going to be Daled Adar. Dalet Adar is not the Shabbos before Purim. So that's going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka because it can't be Parsha Zachar. The next Shabbos is going to be Yud Aleph Adar. That's going to be Parsha Zachar. Purim is going to be the following Tuesday. The next Shabbos is going to be Yud Ches Adar. That'll be Parshas Para. And finally, the last Shabbos of Chodesh Adar will fall out on Chav Hei Adar. That's the last Shabbos of Adar. It's the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That will be Parshas HaKodesh. Now, the last scenario is an interesting one because the last scenario is going to require 2 Shabbosais Hafsakos. Says the Mechaber, Ukeshachal b'yayim Vav, if Rosh Chodesh falls out, if Rosh Chodesh Adar is on Erev Shabbos, then Mafsikim b'shtei Shabbosais, then we're going to have 2 Shabbosais Hafsakos. We're going to have Beis Boy. Beis Adar is going to be a Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is Friday, so Beis Adar is Shabbos. The first Shabbos in Adar is going to be Beis Adar. That's certainly not the Shabbos before Purim, so that can't be Parsha Zachar, so that's going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. And then you're also going to have the 16th of Adar, which, for the sake of the Siman, they're calling Yud Vav. We would call it Tezayin. So Tezayin Adar is also going to be a Shabbos. That's also going to be a Shabbos of Hafsaka. So the Siman is Biv, Beis Yud Vav. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is Beis, is Monday. Ubiv. If Rosh Chodesh Adar is Vav, is an Erev Shabbos, then Beis, the Shabbos, the first Shabbos of Adar is going to be Beis Adar. That's going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. And Yud Vav, and the 16th of Adar is also going to be a Shabbos of Hafsaka. What's the cheshbon over here? The cheshbon is like this. Rosh Chodesh Adar is on a Friday. Okay? So the first Shabbos in Adar is Beis Adar. Cannot be Parsha Shkolim. It's after Rosh Chodesh Adar. So Parsha Shkolim is going to be the last Shabbos in Shvat. The first Shabbos in Adar is Beis. That's not the Shabbos before Purim. It can't be Parsha Zachar. So that's a Shabbos Hafsaka. The next Shabbos is going to be Tes. Tes is going to be the Shabbos before Purim because Purim is going to be the following Thursday. So Tes is going to be Parsha Zachar. The next Shabbos is going to be Tezayin. Now, Tezayin, you would say, really, Tezayin could be Parshas Para, but it can't. Because if Tezayin would be Parshas Para, then it would mean that Chav Gimel would be Parshas HaChodesh. But Chav Gimel is not roi to be Parshas HaChodesh because the next Shabbos is Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that has to be Parshas HaChodesh. And Parshas Para has to be the Shabbos before Parshas HaChodesh. So now you have a second Shabbos Hafsaka, which is going to be Tezayin Adar, is going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. Then Chav Dalet Adar is going to be Parshas Para. And then Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to be Parshas HaChodesh. So it's a little mathematical and a little complex. But really, if you want to be the knacky guy in shul who knows exactly when the Dalet parashiyos fall out, all you have to know is that the simanim of Zatu, Bu, Dad, and Biv. Once you know those simanim, so then you know when the Shabbos Hafsaka is. Once you know when the Shabbos Hafsaka is, you know the 2 Shabbos before the Shabbos Hafsaka. The first one is Shkolim, the second one is Zachar. And then after the Shabbos Hafsaka, you have Para and Chodesh, with the exception of the last one of Ubiv, which is if Rosh Chodesh Adar is a Friday, so then there's 2 Shabbosais Hafsakos. You have the first Shabbos of Adar, Beis Adar is going to be Shabbos Hafsaka, and the last Shabbos of Adar, which is going to fall out on Tezayin, is also going to be a Shabbos Hafsaka. Okay, 2 interesting seifim, no Mishnah Berurah on them, and now we go to something way simpler, and now we go to Sif Zayin on Kuf Nun Amud Aleph, and it's interesting because we're about 20 minutes into the shir, and we haven't read a single Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mechaber Sif Zayin. Yesh Oimrim, there are those that say Parsha Zachar or Parshas Para Aduma Chayavim Lekara Midaraisa. There are those that are of the opinion that Parshas Zachar and Parshas Para are Chiyuve Da'araisa. Lefikach, therefore, B'nei HaYishuvim She'en Lahem Minyan, the people who live in a yishuv, the people who live in a village where they don't have a minyan, tzrichim lavai lamakom sheyesh minyan b'shabbosais halalu, they are mechuyev to travel to a place where there's a minyan, kedei lishmaya parashiyos elu shehei midaraisa, to go hear the parsha of Zachar and the parsha of Parah because they're midaraisa. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting you dalit. Sheparsha Zachar. So it's easy to understand why there are those that say that parsha Zachar is a daraisa, because like the Mishnah Berurah says, Tiksiv Zachar Eis Asher Asa Lecha Amalek. The Torah Kedosha gives you a mitzvah say Zachar Eis Asher Asa Lecha Amalek. You're mechuyev to remember what Amalek, the evil that Amalek did to you. You just got out of Mitzrayim, and Amalek came and swooped down on you and attacked you right when you got out of slavery from Mitzrayim. And what on earth did you do to Amalek? You didn't upset Amalek. You didn't have anything to do with Amalek. You were poor, downtrodden slaves. You came out of Mitzrayim in the midbar. You're traveling in the midbar, and along comes Amalek to go ahead and attack you. So there's a mitzvah say, Zachar Eis Asher Asa Lecha Amalek. And we learn that in the Gemara Masechtas Megillah Yud Ches Amud Aleph, the high Zachar, that when the Torah Kedosha says Zachar, it doesn't mean mentally, just remember it. Hainu ba'amira mitoch hasefer dafka. It means reading the parsha of Amalek from a Sefer Torah. It's not enough to just think about it in your mind. And that's why the Baal Koreh has to have in mind to be moitzi all the people of the Kehillah with this chiyuv of Parshas Zachar, v'gam hashoymim tzrichim lechaven lotzes, and the Kehillah that are listening to the Kriya, they have to have in mind to be yotzei the chiyuv daraisa. Now that's Parshas Zachar. How about Parshas Parah? Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Tesvav, Parshas Parah Aduma. V'harbe achronim kasu, maybe achronim right, sheParshas zu eina midaraisa, that Parshas Parah is not midaraisa. But the Chavetz Chaim says, go back, take a look at Siman Samach in the Mishnah Berurah. Even if Parshas Parah is a Darabanan, you should still know that what I said in Ois Katan Yudalid, that you have to have in mind to be Yotze the mitzvah, even if Parshas Parah is a Darabanan, all right, it's not a Daraisa, maybe you're not mechuyev like the Mechaber says to go travel to someplace with his minion, but still you go here Parshas Parah, you have to have in mind to be Yotze the mitzvah Darabanan of Parshas Parah. Now, this question of Parshas Parah, whether Parshas Parah is a Daraisa or not, is a fascinating question. They struggle, as a matter of fact, I think it's brought down here. I seem to remember there's a Sharet Tzion that brings it down. No, there isn't. This question of Parah being a daraisa, the Achrayim struggled to find a source based on what should Parshas Parah be a daraisa. Zachar, like we say, we do have a mitzvah say daraisa. Zachar is asher asa lecha Amalek. Question is, does that incorporate the chiyuv to go hear the kriya of Parshas Zachar? But there's definitely a mitzvah say daraisa of zchiras ma'aseh Amalek. Parah? Is there a chiyuv daraisa of zchiras ma'aseh Parah aduma? We don't have such a pasuk. We don't seem to have such a chiyuv. The Aruch HaShulchan, interestingly enough, writes he wants to base it on in Parshas Chukas. It twice says that the Parah aduma should be for you as a chukas olam, right? Chukas olam, and the Aruch HaShulchan says, what exactly does this mean? That that the Parah aduma is a chukas olam. Let me see if I can find it just very quickly. Yeah, here's one. The chibes ha'osef es efer ha'parah es begadov, the one who gathers the efer of the parah aduma, his clothing atamei, v'tamei ad ha'orev, v'hoisa livnei Yisrael v'lager agar b'soicham l'chukas olam. This should be a chukas olam. That's one, and I believe there's a second one. Yeah, pasuk chav aleph, v'hoisa lahem l'chukas olam. The procedure of the parah aduma to sprinkle from the mei ha'efer parah on somebody's tummy mace, v'hoisa lahem l'chukas olam. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, chukas olam? So he says, one chukas olam I could touch up is pshat. We know that the parah aduma is not necessarily dependent on the Beis Hamikdash. If somebody was tamei tumas mace and you have the Mei Para Aduma, even after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, it says that in the time of the Amoraim, the Mei Para Aduma was still extant, or extant, depending on how you pronounce it. I think there are two correct pronunciations. You could use the Mei Para Aduma even without the Beis HaMikdash. You can't make a new Para Aduma without the Beis HaMikdash, because the pasuk says Lifnei Hashem. But to use the Mei Para Aduma, you could use it even without the Beis HaMikdash. So that's one Chukas Olam. He says, but how about nowadays? We don't have the Para Aduma at all. We don't have the Mei for Para. So in what sense is it a Chukas Olam? So says the Aruch HaShulchan, it's a Chukas Olam because we have a Chiyuv of Zechira. We have to remember the Para Aduma. So Aruch HaShulchan suggests maybe that's the source for why Parshas Para should be a Da'araisa. Okay. Ois Cotton Tes Zayin. L'mokum sheish minyan. So the Mechaber said you have to go to where there's a minyan. Ha, says the Mishnah Berurah. Hainu. Afilu yesh loy sefer Torah bebeisa. You'll say, wait a second, hold it. You told me that there's a chiyuv of zechira, and that the chiyuv of zechira means not just in your mind, you have to read it from a sefer. So fine, I have a shul in my basement, I have a sefer Torah. I was just by a friend of mine last night who I haven't been by him in years. He showed me the gorgeous shul that he has in his basement. So you have a shul in your basement, you have a sefer Torah, take out a sefer Torah, read Parshas Zachar. And I was Mekayim the mitzvah. Why do I need a minyan? Hainu afilu yesh lo sefer Torah bebeisai, says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Even if you have a sefer Torah, ela she'ein lo minyan bebeisai, if you don't have a minyan, you got to go get a minyan. Va'afilu im noimar de minyan lo Parshas Zachar hu min derabanan ba'alma. Now, even if you'll go like the Shitas who say that minyan is really only a requirement to Rabbanon. You're right. Zechira mitoich ha-sefer, that is a daraisa. But minyan is only a darabanon. Still, I'll call upon him ikar kriyas zachar hu daraisa. But what does that mean? It means that zechira ma'isa amalek, kriya mitoich ha-sefer, is a daraisa. And the darabanon came along and they said, in order for you to be mekayim your chiyuv daraisa, you got to do it with a minyan. So you still got to do it with a minyan. V'hinei b'trumas hadeshen kosav, the Trumas Hadeshen writes, Tishmias kriyas Parshas Zachar ba'asara adif yosim imikra begila b'tzibur. Trumas Hadeshen writes, let's say you have a choice. If you're going to travel to somewhere where there's a minyan on Shabbos to hear Parshas Zachar with a minyan, then you're not going to hear Megillah with a minyan. If you stay home, you'll hear Megillah on Purim with a minyan, but then you're not going to get Parshas Zachar with a minyan. You'll get Parshas Zachar kriya mitach hasefer, but not with a minyan. Which one comes first? Trumas Hadeshen says Parshas Zachar comes first. Why? Shemikra Megillah lo das reva paiskim sagi b'zman b'yachid. Because Megillah, you don't need a minyan, according to most paiskim. Valkain im efshel lekayim shteim, you can't do both. Yir lekayim kriyas Parshas Zachar b'tzibur. The Trumas Hadeshen says what comes first? Parshas Zachar b'tzibur. Aval Magen Avram and Tzadid, but the Magen Avram takes the position the Tov Yosef sheyavel lamakim shekarin a Megillah b'tzibur. Better you should hear him in the Megillah b'tzibur. U'Parshas Zachar Yosef al piatchak b'mashe yishma akriya. Oh, and Parshas Zachar. What will you do with Parshas Zachar? Says the Magen Avram. U'Parshas Zachar Yosef al piatchak. Since this is a chasat chak, you'll be Yosef b'mashe yishma akriya b'Purim Parshas Vayavay Amalek. When you go to Shul Purim morning, they get a lane. What did they get a lane? From this week's Parsha, from Parshas Peshalach. They get a lane, Vayavay Amalek. They get a lane, the story of Amalek's attack on us. And you'll be Yaitse, says the Magen Avram, with that Kriya. V'Yaitse Yidei Chayvasai. U'Ritzon Aloymer, the Yaitse Midaraisa. The Magen Avram says you'll be Yaitse Yechiv Daraisa of Zchiras Maasei Amalek, Kriya Mitoich HaSefer, by hearing the laning of Purim morning in Shul, Vayavay Amalek V'Hilachim B'Yisrael. Continues the Chavetz Chaim. But since mitzvah sfichas kavana, realize yet tzarich be'eshmias parshazu lechavin lotzeis bazem mitzasei shel zachar. But this is only going to work if Purim morning in shul you have in mind to be yotze your chiyuv of zchiras ma'asei amalek. Avol anias daiti. However, the Chavetz Chaim says in his humble opinion he doesn't like this Magen Avram. Avol anias daiti ikar dinai shel Magen Avram tzarachian. He says this Magen Avram is tzarachian. Ta'ksiv b'Torah, because what does it say by the Chiyuv Daraisa Ma'asei Amalek? Zachar eis asher asa lecha Amalek. The pasuk says at the end of Kisei, Zachar, you should remember Eis Asher Asalecha Amalek, what Amalek did to you. Asher Karacha Baderech, that they ambushed you on the way. Vayizaniv B'chakal Nechashalom Acharecha, and they attacked the weak ones amongst you. V'hakavana, clearly the intent of the Torah Kedosha is Shaloi Lishkoyach Masha Asalanu Amalek, that we should never forget what Amalek did to us. Unesaper Zel Levanenu, we should tell it over to our children. Uledoireisenu, into the future generations. Loimalem, to say to them, Kach Asalanu Arosha. This is what Amalek the Risham did to us. Ulekach Nitztavinu Limchais Shemai, and therefore we are commanded to wipe them out. Kemoshe Kasav Ramban B'Berurah. V'zelu niskar b'parshiyos vayavei Amalek. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you want to be yotze in the mitzvah say daraisa by hearing the kriya for Parshas B'Shalach, Purim morning in shul of Vayavei Amalek. Vayavei Amalek is just a very sterile historical recitation of the events of what happened when Amalek came to come ahead and try to destroy us. That's not what it says in Kiseitze. Kiseitze is a tzivui of Zachar. That's where the tzivui is, that we have to remember it, and we have to tell it over. And that's where it recounts the rishus of what Amalek did. Asher karcha baderech, vayizani b'chakal anechashalom acharecha, v'ata oyev v'yageya. That's what the Torah Kedosha wants. You can't be, it's not so simple, says the Chavetz Chaim, to say that you could be yotze that with vayavei Amalek. So the Chavetz Chaim certainly does not like that. Okay, now we go to the Ramah to close out this interesting Siman. Says the Ramah, Haga, v'im yefshar lahem lavai, if somebody is not able to travel to a place with his minion, mikamakam yizaru l'kroisam, mikamakam, you should at least be careful to read the parsha of Parsha Zachar from a sefer, from a chumash, b'niginasam, with the trop, of a taimam, and with the proper vowelization and pronunciation. Says Mishnah Berurah, you should take care to read it. The Yahada Likroisem Mitaycha Sefer. Chavetz Chaim says what the Ramah means is read it from a sefer. You don't have a sefer Torah, at least read it from a chumash. The Chanal B'Sivkat Yudal. Aizkat Yudches B'Nigasan Uvetaimam, with the proper trop and with the proper vowelization. Da, you should know, says the Chavetz Chaim, the Yesh Oimrim Chetzarch Likrois Zecher Amalek B'Tzerei. This is very well known. There's a machlokes how to pronounce the word Zecher over there at the end of Kiseitze. Either Zecher with a Tzerei, or V'yesh Oimrim Chetzarch Likrois Zecher Amalek B'Segoil. V'alkein, therefore, me'anachin, it would be proper, Sha'akore Yikra Shneim, that the one who's laning Parsha Zachar should say both. La says Hidei Shneim. Kasav Ma'aril, the Ma'aril writes, B'chal arba parashiyos ein maskirin the Shamais. Now the Chavetz Chaim is just tying up some loose ends, some housekeeping. We had a whole siman here about the Dalet parashiyos. The Ma'aril says we don't say a kel mole on one of the Shabbosais of the Dalet parashiyos. V'oimrim tzidkascha v'tzidkascha tzidkascha. We say the psukim of tzidkascha after mincha on Shabbos afternoon. Ule'inyan of arachimim, as far as whether or not we should say of arachimim, Be'el Rabbah. The Be'eli Rabbah b'shem Hagoyis ben Hagim the Yesh Laim Abem Avarachimim, but Ubedaki Moshe the Ramah b'shem Amaril Mashma De'einoim Rebem Avarachimim. V'chein Hetik b'derech Achayim Ole Inyan Taina Shel Shovevim Tat. If you want to know about the minig of fasting Shovevim Tat, the minig of fasting every Thursday, with the week beginning Parshas Shmos, going through Truma Tetzaveh, and in an Ibriyar going through Vayakel Pikudei. Ayin be'Be'er Shari Tshuva. He points us to the Be'er Hetiv and the Shari Tshuva. That concludes today's share. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schos of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs parnasit sheduchim to all those who need. We should be zeicher to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.